long time, Marion had her wedding gown bought from the springtime, and George, who was off in service, uh, only came home at certain times. They didn't know ahead of time when he was going to come. They had the wedding gown all bought. They were trying to get together and have the marriage. Then all of a sudden, they came and said, "We're getting married on the 6th of September, and Mom and Dad McVeigh, will you come to the wedding?" "Oh, yes, we'll come." They had been waiting a long time to get married, and then my in-laws couldn't go to both weddings at the same time, so that had precedence because they had waited a long time. We hadn't even been engaged very long.
Right, right.
So that they were able to attend that wedding. And then we changed ours. We didn't even have it set, but we said, all right, we'll get married when it's when you're off and when the church is available and everything. We'll get married on the 20th instead. So that's how we got married on the 20th. Ernie was very happy and very nice in uniform, and it was not planned ahead so that you didn't go out and have to get a place for dinner, and you didn't get a photographer, and you didn't do all these things. As a matter of fact, everybody was so busy. All the men were in service, and the women were working in the different factories and everything, or, as my friends were working in the gauge department. If you had a special talent, you were working on that. So there wasn't any particular, we didn't get a photographer. In the last minute, there wasn't time to make a wedding gown. My mother's friend, my second mother, had always said she was going to make my wedding gown, but there wasn't enough time. So we went to a bridal shop, and I picked out a white wedding gown, and then the same gown was picked out. One was in blue for my best friend, and one was in pink for my sister. So we all had the same gowns, and they weren't very expensive at all. And then they told me I needed to wear long sleeve gloves with this gown. It had short sleeves. You're supposed to wear long gloves. I'm going to feel real funny in long gloves. I don't want to wear long gloves. And my father, who had never worn a tuxedo and never dressed up except for his army uniform from way back when he used to go in the parades. And he wore army boots. He never wore boots, never wore shoes, and I think it had something to do with working in the asphalt plants and testing the roads and if they were being done right. But anyway, he wore boots all the time, and he wore a Sunday suit, and he still wore the same boots that he always wore, and he walked me down the aisle in the same boots. My mother made the wedding cake, and it started out in the bottom. It was made in the dishpan, and it was the size of the dishpan, and it had all homemade fruit in it. And the next size was that she made out of this wonderful fruit cake of her own. The next size was the size of a cake plate, the ordinary kind. Then it had the last piece was made in the coffee can, and she used the same batter to put this in the coffee can. There were 3 different tiers like that. She made the whole thing herself, and she had taken up a hobby of cake decorating. She had a lot of different hobbies, and that was one that she enjoyed doing. And she used to make these very fancy cakes when somebody was getting engaged, and she'd put a little figure on the top, and the skirt was all made of fancy different roses and things that she had learned to do. So she did the wedding cake herself, and she bought a little ceramic figure of a bride and groom and put them on the top. And then she made cookies in the shape of hearts and diamonds. They were homemade cookies, and they were sprinkled with pink sugar, and they were served front punch. And at Calvary Baptist Church, we got married at 5 o'clock, and the invitations were put up on the bulletin board for everybody that had been to church all those years and seen me coming in as a little girl, starting kindergarten, and growing up in that church and getting married. And the invitation was right there on the bulletin board for everybody to come.
Wow.
So this church is a very beautiful church, and then between the main area where the congregation was, there was a wall that opened up, and there was an anteroom next to it that had been used for teaching Sunday school, and they had tables all set up, and the wedding cake was there, and there were cookies there and fruit punch, and you went right from the wedding into the next room and had wedding cake and fruit punch or cookies. And the bride and groom were standing there to greet you, and everybody was very welcome. There was nobody excluded from anything because there was dinner from some and not other people. It was very inexpensive. My mother had gone down to the Big Chief Market that sold out all the flowers they had on Saturday night, and she got up and with all those flowers she went down and decorated the whole church with what flowers were available left on Saturday night. And she did a very nice job, and my bouquet was made out of gladiolas that you could buy just about anywhere at that time, very inexpensively. And I'm so glad, actually, that nobody took any pictures because it didn't cut what would be the normal pictures that I've seen my children take. And it was very amateurish in a way, but it was a very happy wedding, and those that came were invited to everything. And wedding presents in those days were not expensive at all. We got 3 or 4 alarm clocks to make sure that the group could get up and go to work, and toasters, and actually a glass dish and a glass platter that I still have today. And I never would give anybody glass things for wedding presents because I never thought they would last that long.
Right. You think they break and...
So that's the end of that one.